Yeah.
Okay, now what do you think now in movies generally? People do talk about the fact that when you come before you get into a knowledge fully, they used to be like bring this to get this. When it comes to the women, they might say you have to do this or submit it to get this. Now, how do you think that has affected the industry, and how true is that belief or that claim that for a woman, you like they say sex for roles, you have to come and sleep with some directors before they can give you role, or for men they will say that bring money or things like that. How true is that reality, and how has it affected people?
Again, it goes back to this whole advocacy for a revisitation, if you remember, a rejigging of the entire ecosystem of filmmaking. In the 90s, with the birth of what you call Nollywood today, auditions were like, for final year students in law, like the almighty June of those years, where on campuses, faculty of law, on campuses, they would line up ambulances, because if you failed, also in the medical school at the time, some people pass out on account of the fact that they saw questions and they couldn't figure out what answers to give to these questions, and they knew that failing that course would mean they wouldn't proceed to become either lawyers or medical doctors. And so the consequence oftentimes is that most of these people pass out and they are rushed off the exam hall to hospitals and the like. That is just the way I can liken auditions in the 90s. It came like a final year exam.
Wow.
Because you were prepared, as it were, a couple of days before the audition, just so that you would be on top of your game. Because of course you would be auditioning for a particular role with so many people who are equally good. So it will be a contest of varying interpretations. Brilliant interpretations, no doubt. But the director will be looking out for just one of those interpretations to fit into the overall artistic expectation of that particular work. Having said that, it is not so. Or rather, it ceased to be so after a while, when mediocres invaded filmmaking in Nigeria, and I dare say elsewhere, because I mean, you have heard of the what is his name, Einstein's scandal in America, in Hollywood, and all of that. So it's not something that is unique to Nigeria. But I would say, from where I am sitting, that those who ought not to have any business with filmmaking invaded the industry and came with all forms of mediocrity, one of which was the jettisoning of rational, objective, dispassionate sense of casting, and subjected the entire structure that ought to throw up the best of the best to play roles, subjecting them to personal, amorous expectations. And of course, again, same old for a bunch of loose women who had no business being in the industry, who had nothing to offer other than perhaps their beauty. And so they too came not to struggle, not to work hard, not to sweat to get roles, but to offer their bodies. I mean, that is, for me, is a definition of prostitution. So they exist. They exist. I mean, producers who are amorous, who are irresponsible, who are unprofessional. Like I said, they had no business being in the industry. And of course, female, majorly, there are female, no doubt, who also had no business being in the industry except to flaunt their bodies and get roles. And let me tell you the truth, if you go back and see some of these works, it is so easy for you to know that this person ought not to have played this role. So mediocrity began to thrive and all of those. But I must make the point that it is not something that is uniquely found within Nollywood. It happens in the banking sector, just that we don't get to hear about it. Why? Because we are always in the front of the camera. So we are always the ones that the world sees. If you go to what do you call the banking industry, you'll find people like that. In oil and gas, in sundry human inclinations, you'll find that there are people who do not play by the rules. Okay, there are people who get promoted on account of how curvy they are, on account of how they have been able to, what's the word now that they use? They're able to be escorts to their orgas, you know, if you know what I mean. And they land sumptuous positions. So they are not different from the young ladies who sleep around to get roles. They are all, like Zebudiah would say, they are all 10 and 10 pence and all that. So it's there. But that is not to say that we shouldn't do something about it. And that is where I would always call on the guilds. You know, I think we should also think out with our regulatory framework. You know, it's been a challenge for quite a while. Emeka Rollas, the current president of AGN, is doing so much, so much to see how we can deal with the issue of who accesses the industry and who exits the industry. We should have clearly defined templates for being an actor or an actress. And for all, for other guilds, Association of Movie Producers, Directors Guild of Nigeria, Scriptwriters Guild of Nigeria, to ensure that this attitude of trouncing, sometimes words fail me, trouncing what ought to be done in order to give vent to your amorous sense of dealings, are dealt with.
Do you think that is the reason why you see some female actresses, you see, after acting like 1 or 2 movies, they're already building houses and buying cars and things like that?
Now, that in the whole wide world I cannot answer, because I do know that as rich as the industry is, as the industry of today, I don't think that even if you had a major blockbuster, you could afford to buy an SUV of 150 million naira from one flick. Only God knows how much they were paid. And I ask myself, how much were the investors making to be able to pay that? You see, we have so what's the word now? We have so materialized, filmmaking in this country. And again, it goes to the absence, the degradation of our value system. We now worship, this demon called Mammon. People do so much. You and I are from the southeast of Nigeria. You hear of Okite. You have most musicians these days don't sing anything that drive the consciousness of decent living or that emboldens who you truly are by way of your spirituality, your originality. Almost every lyric now stays within the space of money. Live big, live big, live big. I mean, I see some videos and I'm asking myself, you find a musician that is about 21, 22 years old, spraying dollars, lighting fat cigars, seeing them, even though the vehicles are borrowed, but you create the impression that life is that easy. And then what happens? Because what the eyes see, the mind captures and the brain interprets in such a manner that at age 21 you begin to look at how to drive a big car, you see a woman that's carrying a Gucci bag. They tell you that Gucci bag she bought for $25,000, and a young girl that is just an actress is beginning to dream of carrying the kind of bag that Jennifer Lopez carries around and all that. And so many things now go, under the bridge, all in the name of being movie stars. I'm not going to go beyond that.
Don't you think then you guys, Nollywood, aided this debasement of morals and culture? Because in the time of old, when you guys used to act them, most of the movies you guys ask is rituals, you make money overnight, you sacrifice, you do this. Don't you think those roles aided to debase the culture that people see now? Because when people see movie, what they're seeing is flaunting of wealth, money, and all of that, quick money, go to one ritual, sacrifice, all of those things to make money. Hasn't that aided the culture we are seeing now?
I respectfully disagree with you, because you must understand the didactic dimension of art. Art is at once therapeutic, it heals, it entertains, but fundamentally for some of us is didactic. It teaches. What we did in the past, and people like us still do today, is to expose the ills in society. Michael Jackson says, I am talking to the man in the mirror. I am asking him to change his ways. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself in the mirror and make a change. That is what the advocacy is all about. That there are people who want to cut corners to become rich like this. That is what we expose. And it is not criminal to expose that there are people who go through means that are diabolical, unethical, to make money. Is it only rituals? There are people who have made money from prostitution. There are people who have made money from cocaine pushing. Did we also do that? But the fact of the matter is that if you have people who are ritualists to do Kite, to do all of those, they are only justifying and laying some level of legitimacy to what we have exposed. But what you do with what we have exposed, what we have revealed, is entirely your business. If I have taken up roles to expose the fact that there are people who do this and this and this and this, Onyeka went on till she died. What would it conspiracy? What would she agree as a person, if you know Onyeka, to go and climb a top, stay at the peak of a refuse dump and pretend to be eating from rubbish? It is because we wanted to expose the injustice and the evil in society. What man could do to a fellow man, man's inhumanity to man. But that doesn't justify that you should probably engage in a drug addiction that makes you to run colos, and you end up living and eating from the refuse dump. So the point I'm trying to make is no. A lot of people have said this, and I keep asking myself, I mean, is it criminal that we expose the evils, in our time? It is not. It is not criminal. But what you do with what we have shown you is entirely your business. That is from the point of view of acting. There is this classicals. If you know anything about American film, Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor simply told the story of American independence. So we have, as actors, and by the way, how many of us know that every actor properly called is a social activist and advocate for public good, for the remaking of the earth? I travel almost now and then, and I receive people who are not Nigerian, Eritreans, Senegalese, Americans, Caucasians, who shake my hands to say that they saw some of our works and the points we put out, artistically speaking, dramatically speaking. So I am saying that it is not in exposing through our works that there are people who are ritual killers and the like for the sake of making it, by going through shortcuts and all of those. Because
if you're acting all those roles and people see it, someone may just love the expression of the wealth that is shown in the movie.
So wouldn't you rather say someone would wrongly interpret the message that is put out?
So,
for example, if you go to church and you are sitting in the pew and the man preaching from the pulpit